ushering this new era that we're calling essentialism, which is all about human and tech and everything that is essential, and not just like adding and adding and adding stack for the sake of it, which, there is a tipping point. There's a point where it starts being more detrimental than actually helping the runner. And some of this insight really came from consumers, that they felt like by adding all of this material under their foot, yes, they were getting the protection. At the same time, it was really inhibiting that connected feel or that proprioception or the feedback from the ground that so many runners still really need and want. And that was the spark or the catalyst or the insight that has given rise to the Glycerin Flex for us.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was Nikhil Jain today on the Running Effect podcast. If you're unfamiliar with Nikhil, he is the director of product line management at Brooks Running and one of the big minds behind the all-new Glycerin Flex that I recently got to try out at the running event in San Antonio with Brooks. It was such a fun experience. The shoe is remarkable, and it's not every day that you get to sit down with one of the people behind one of the major shoe launches and releases. So for me and the little cross-country boy who loved shoes and learning about them, today is Christmas Day. I loved sitting down with him and learning about what goes into making a shoe, the launch of the shoe, and the technology of this shoe. I'm going to keep this intro short so you guys can hear the story behind the shoe and hear the story behind Nikhil's journey to get to Brooks. If you're interested in joining the running shoe industry one day, this conversation is for you. But quick note for you, it's almost the Christmas season, so I want to benefit one of you and also allow you guys to try out this remarkable shoe. So I'm going to pick one lucky winner. If you are on YouTube or Spotify, comment below a running goal you have for 2026, and I will randomly pick one of you and buy you an all-new pair of the Brooks Glycerin Flex when it comes out on January 31st, 2026. And without further ado, enjoy my conversation with the one and only Nikhil Jain. Ladies and gentlemen, sitting across from me is a man who is behind some of your favorite running shoes. I'm honored, and it's a privilege to sit down with the man, the myth, the legend, Nikhil Jain. How you doing, man?
How's it going, Dom? Thanks for having me. And thanks for that. That's a pretty effusive introduction, so I appreciate that.
Got to hype you up. You work for the brand Brooks Running. I saw you last week in San Antonio. For those who aren't aware, there's this event every year that happens in the running world called the Running Event, and I guess how it's been best described to me as kind of the biggest running trade show in the world, the biggest, the best. For you, obviously, being in the footwear line at Brooks, it's a massive event every year unveiling new shoes, but specifically this year with the Brooks Glycerin Flex, which I know we'll talk about today. How big of an event is that for you? And when you come home, I'm sure you're running short on sleep. How ready are you to crash and catch up on sleep?
Yeah, it's definitely longer days, shorter nights at the running event, and certainly for us, a huge event for us. As a brand, Brooks Sports, our key focus is running, building the best product in the world for people who want to move. And so, for us, the running event is quintessential, and it is becoming more of a global event. At this launch, obviously, we had the Glycerin Flex, but we did also have a lot of our partners from Europe as well as Asia Pacific, and a lot of media that were flown in as well for this event. So certainly a huge event for us, and an exciting launch.
Let's take a step back, 30,000 foot view. Take me through how you even get a job with Brooks in the first place, and some of your journey and introduction to your time with the brand to get to the point where you're at with them.
Sure. I think the beauty of this industry is there's so many ways in which you can actually get into this industry, and each one of us have our own journey. I am from India. I grew up in Bombay. My mom got me into running. She was a runner. She loves sports. And so I wanted to get into the sports industry. I was never fast enough to compete at the highest level for India, but it just so happened coming out of business school in the US, I was able to get a job with a sports company, and it was working in apparel for Hind, the brand. And since then, I've been able to work within the footwear industry, and been at Brooks now about 10 years. Started as a senior product line manager at Brooks, and worked in innovation. And in the last 2.5 years, I've been heading up the product line management team here. So, how you get a job? You could certainly get a job through as a guru, being a tech rep for Brooks. A lot of people who work in the industry today started at retail, and that's where you really learn those skills of engaging with consumers, understanding what the end consumer wants, getting them in the right type of product, listening to them, and then based on what they say, really kind of extrapolating it into, well, what do they really need or want versus what they might just say in the moment.
Speaking specifically 10 years back, your beginning of your time with Brooks, I feel like the running shoe industry has changed drastically in the last 10 years with super shoes and all sorts of new brands coming up. If we were to talk 10 years ago, Brooks would have been an entirely different place. Hoka and On really weren't too much of a thing. It was kind of just like Nike at the top. And I feel like over the last 10 years, so many shifts have happened. For you as someone in this role, how cool has it been to be a part of one of those brands and their rise, and be a part of all the craziness of the running shoe industry with super shoes? And, you look at the Glycerin Max, I think it's called, one of my favorite running shoes. And you run in that thing and you're like, we did not have this 10 years ago. I was running in flats worried my Achilles was going to fall off because I didn't have support.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like I've been in the industry since 2003, and so much has changed since 2003. And like even, like in the 2005, 6, 9 is when the whole like minimalist barefoot movement was kind of, like taking place. And even that was like amazing because it just brought so many new runners into the ecosystem. And I'd say the same thing for, like in the last 10 years where it's been, like super shoes, like you said, high stack shoes, and what that has meant to bringing in more consumers because, people who had knee pain can now actually run again, and it's so liberating in that sense. And it was the same thing, with minimalist product. Is like there's some people who are just able to start running again. And so I think, we've kind of gone through a little bit of that, like minimalist era, which we kind of connect to just the human foot and how it moves. And then now this maximalist era where it's all about technology, right? The best foams in the world and the chemistry and is it PBA, is it ATPU, right? And I think now we're seeing this confluence where it's not, this pendulum that swings back and forth. It's really the best of both those worlds, where you take the human, you take the tech, and you combine them, and that's where the Glycerin Flex truly comes in. It's ushering this new era that we're calling essentialism, which is all about human and tech, and everything that is essential, and not just like adding and adding and adding stack for the sake of it, which, there is a tipping point. There's a point where, it starts being more detrimental than actually helping the runner. And some of this insight really came from consumers that they felt like by adding all of this material under their foot, yes, they were getting the protection. At the same time, it was really inhibiting that connected feel or that proprioception or the feedback from the ground that so many runners still like really need and want. And that was the spark or the catalyst or the insight that has given rise to the Glycerin Flex for us.
Well, Nikhil, I was waiting for a trampoline shoe that was about 20 feet high and would make me bounce about 4-minute miles. So I'm glad to see the Glycerin Flex and the technology behind it. But one final question for you before we pivot to talking about this new and innovative shoe that you helped to pioneer. We have a lot of listeners, I think, who are kind of in that reality, whether it's high school, college, post-college, in that tipping point where they realize, like you back in the day, they maybe can't run for their national team, maybe can't get a professional running contract from Brooks. And so they want to find other ways to be involved in the sport and give back to the sport through a role like yours or a different role within a major running shoe brand or company. As someone who's in it, and I know you gave some advice before, but I guess elaborating on it for someone who's listening, wants to stay in the sport, realizes they can't do it through their legs, so maybe they want to through their brain. What would be some advice for those listening today?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the best ways to get involved is, like I was saying, a lot of the brands really invest in the tech rep, and for Brooks, it's our gurus, where they are our feet on the ground, our eyes and ears, the closest to consumers. They're at events, they're conducting clinics, they're helping retailers sling shoes, irrespective of the brand. And that certainly is a great way to better understand the consumer, get closer to being involved in the industry. You're part of retail, which is a huge part. For us at Brooks, it's a combination of the physical and the digital, not just one-dimensional way of getting our product to people. And so I certainly think that is one of the best ways for someone, whether you're in high school, college, post-college, you want to switch careers, you're an athlete that's looking for that next step. That's one certain great way. And then the other thing is, look, you know yourself best. You know what your skill set is, where your education is, and where your interests lie. And I think it's taking those three things, and then just through the opportunities you get to network, to just reach out to people. I love this industry. I think it's an industry where people are more laid back. They have fun doing what they do. And they're willing to share. They're willing to share their journey. They're willing to, provide advice or, connect you to people. And so I think if you take the initiative and reach out and you're like, hey, I have these amazing design skills. I've run, for brands, and I feel like, I can design product, then hey, there could be an opportunity for you. Or you've got an engineering background, or you're a great listener, and you're able to understand what consumers are looking for and connect dots, and so you could work in product management and certainly marketing, events. It's an industry that's continuing to grow, and as we continue to grow, we're going to need younger and greater minds, and so yeah, take the initiative.
I love it. And I hope you conduct a job interview 5 years from now and you hear from some people who got into the industry because of the response on the podcast would be a good goal. And I just think the sport is beautiful, where there are so many different avenues to stay involved in the sport if you did it at a young age. And I think that's pretty unique and rare. If you played football in middle school, it's very unlikely you're going to get a job in the NFL with one of the teams. Whereas I know so many people in the industry who, if you work hard, people take a chance on you. And there's so many running brands, running shoe stores, whatever it might be, that will give you a chance. So if you're out there listening, you could be the next one to pioneer whatever the next Glycerin Flex is in 10 years. And speaking of that shoe, you mentioned you started working at Brooks 10 years ago. I was at the running event when it was kind of announced to the world. And if I'm not mistaken, they talked about the technology and how this was kind of a 10-year project. So I'm curious for you, when did you first hear about this shoe and some of the tech behind it? And just take me into the process of what it took to make this shoe.
Sure, yeah. I mean, it's probably more than even 10 years, right? I think this ties to Brooks's core philosophy that we call Run Signature, which is that every individual on this earth is unique and how you move is unique. And so our North Star is to constantly build so that each individual has the best running experience. And with that in mind, we're looking to make sure that the consumer has the most comfortable running experience. And for a lot of people, even what we used to call neutral running shoes weren't ideal for that consumer and how their body would move. And it was almost like the shoe was still coming in the way of that running experience and not really complementing how the foot moves. So we've been kind of trying to solve for that for more than a decade. And a few of one shoe going back more than 10 years is the Neuro, the Brooks Neuro, which came out, I think, in 2015 or early 2016. So actually before I joined Brooks. But that shoe was like decoupled to really kind of follow the shape and how the foot is built, and it's decoupled in terms of the heel and the forefoot. So we launched that shoe. It was positioned a little bit more under like speed because it was lightweight, it was decoupled. And then, you kind of fast forward to when we were building our concept car, the Blue Line shoe, the Aurora BL. And that was, featuring DNA loft, which was nitrogen injected. And we really wanted to create this glide-like running experience, something as natural as possible so that the shoe gets out of the way. And so we decoupled that shoe midsole and the forefoot were separate from each other, slightly different durometers. And what we found is, like, in both cases, there were some people that absolutely just loved running in those shoes. Like, it was an unlock. It was like, wow, I can't imagine how liberating this running experience is. I'm still protected in the Aurora BL. I think the Neuro was a little bit lower profile. The foams weren't as good at that point, right, in terms of like the displacement, the energy return. But with supercritical foams, we had it. And through all of this, on the other end, we've been talking about support and how every shoe has support in it. And what does support look like for different consumers? And it's not just having, like this medial biased structure through a post or something else. And so through all of that, we were also doing work in terms of figuring out support. And for some runners, the shoe moving with you, allowing your forefoot to splay, provides more support. And that's a better running experience. So on one end of the spectrum, we have this concept and idea of like, if we can have the shoe move with you, you're going to have a better running experience. On the other end of the spectrum, there's for some consumers, they want the shoe to do the work for them, and that's where the Glycerin Max comes in. The shoe moves for you. And so that's kind of our support spectrum, with our core shoes and our GTS shoes kind of slotting in the middle. So anyways, you connect these two dots of like, hey, if we decouple the midsole and how liberating that feel is, and then like, how do we create this support through it and still give the runner that kind of protection and that connected feel, that feedback from the ground. And that was the impetus to the shoe, the Glycerin Flex. Knowing that, like at some point of time, consumers are going to move on from maximalism, but they're not going to just want to swing back to something that's low profile or closer to the ground. They want to have the best of both worlds, the protection, but also, the feedback from the ground. And so that was kind of like the impetus. And honestly, all of this started coming together in like 23 and 24. And the conversations that we were having, how we were connecting dots. And now in spring 26 and 1st of February 26, you're going to see this shoe and be able to experience this liberating, flexible, uninhibited running experience.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on the concept you spoke on earlier of essentialism and how the Glycerin Flex kind of represents that through its specific technologies?
Yeah. So like I said, when we think of this new era, it's a combination of human and tech, right? So the human is like the actual way the foot is built and how it moves. So I've got the shoe over here, right? So this is your Glycerin Flex that's launching. And the real kind of secret sauce is when you kind of flip it over and look at that outsole. So we have this key technology over here. It's this groove which we call the flex zone, right? And it runs right from the lateral side all the way over to the medial side. That really represents, your, it kind of mimics and reflects your joint axis in your foot, so your subtalar joint axis. And so what it does is as you're kind of running, and your kind of foot starts everting and moving in, it locks up. And so that provides a little bit of that support that you need. And then as you kind of land and then you start toeing off, it really just opens up, right? So that's where it just opens up. And that's your natural supination that takes place. For some people, this feels amazing because it's the shoe moving exactly how your foot wants to move. So I think that is that human aspect, right? In terms of like this reflects how your foot is meant to move. And the beauty of this is that this is going to work for so many people, irrespective of their individuality, because it has so much of that ability to move with your foot. In addition to that, right, we wanted to make it really flexible in the forefoot, because we understand with work that we've done with the Aurora is that when you decouple that midfoot, you need a little bit more of that wider platform. So not only do you have that wider platform, this pod tech execution really allows the foot to kind of open up and splay, and that's how you get that support in the forefoot. And then we added a little bit more support by kind of kicking out the medial side of the shoe. And what we're hearing back from consumers that they feel like they have more support in the forefoot, which feels amazing. So this is all the human side of the work, and our biomechanics team and all the research that we've done over the last 5, 10, 15 years, all those learnings have kind of like been incorporated in that. The technology side is DNA tuned, which you've seen in the glycerin over the last couple of years. And so this has our DNA tuned technology. It is small cell, large cell. So you've got, and it has that stack height of 36 millimeters in the heel, 30 millimeters in the forefoot. That 30 millimeters in the forefoot is the same as what we have in a glycerin coming out in spring 26. So it shows that we've got that protection in the forefoot, especially that consumers are looking for. And because you have this smaller cell, this bright green color, that is slightly more dense. It's got a little bit more of that firmness and responsiveness, so you're going to feel like that pop in the forefoot. And you've just got more of this large cell, which is the softer material. As you kind of land, it's going to feel more cushion. So those two, that's just how that human and tech come through into the midsole. And then the upper, we went with this really nice flat knit upper materialization. So you're still locked in the heel, locked down in the midfoot. You can cinch up your laces. We have a separated tongue so that it works for all sorts of different runners and their feet, their shape, instep, etc. So it's going to really adapt in terms of fit. You get that lockdown. And in the forefoot, you've got a material that is going to like open up and stretch with your foot as it splays, which is where you want that movement, right? Today, a lot of consumers want that movement in the forefoot. So again, that's where you've got 10 plus years of research, consumer input, insight, all coming together. And that's why we feel like the way we built the shoe is holistic. It's not just specific to the midsole. It's got that movement, that flexibility in the forefoot as well to really kind of bring it all together.
I love it. Remarkable shoe. I love the one run I had in it and then the full day of walking in it in San Antonio. I think for me, I've tried it, just about every pair of shoes from every running brand because they all send them to me. You don't want to see my closet. It's a mess. And what I love about this shoe is you do feel one with the ground while still having support. And I don't think there's been a shoe released that makes you feel those two contrasting feelings at once. As you described early on, it's either you feel like you're on two pillows stacked together, or you try a barefoot shoe and you feel like, ow, my feet hurts. I feel like I'm walking on nothing, and you can't really run in those because you'll get injured in them. So I'm really excited to continue to test out this shoe. And I'm curious for you, how revolutionary do you feel like this shoe is? And specifically, having been at Brooks for other shoe launches, where do you feel like this one lines up in terms of being revolutionary in the running community? Because I don't know if I've ever heard of. They kind of hyped it up, the release, so I was like, oh, it's gonna be cool. And then I got there and the science was explained, and I was like, oh, okay, this is cool. I've never heard of this, you know.
Yeah, I mean, look, I obviously I'm a little biased, but it's certainly revolutionary if you think about what all has gone into the thought process, the intention behind the shoe, whether it's from a consumer perspective, the amount of technology, both in terms of biomechanics, the running experience, the underfoot feel, all of that, certainly makes it revolutionary. And then, this is a shoe, in my opinion, that anyone can use. It is not restricted to a specific, person, because everyone, right, moves, and the shoe is going to move with you. So inherently, it is so, I guess, you know, adaptable or able to move with each unique individual, that anyone could use the shoe to run in, to move in, to walk in. And in that sense, the versatility of the shoe, I think, is absolutely incredible. And you kind of talked to it to some extent, right, Tom? And I think in that sense, it's not only just a new running experience, but it is an opportunity for everyone to try the shoe. And in that sense, certainly I think it's going to be revolutionary, and it's going to be an experience that we want to bring to as many consumers as we can. And we'll be intentional about it, but we can certainly see us bringing this experience to other other franchises that we have in our line, because not everyone has $170, that they're going to be able to shell out to, and we don't want to restrict an amazing experience to just a few individuals.
Amazing. Final question for you: who is this shoe for? I personally think it could work for anyone, but from the man himself. For those listening, who do you think this shoe will work best for, and what do you feel like are the best use cases for it in terms of types of runs or whatnot?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like I said, this shoe, anyone and everyone can benefit from this shoe. Look, I am not the fastest. I am certainly not the most efficient. So how I would use the shoe is in the sense that, like a couple of days a week, I'm running in the shoe. It gives me the protection I need. I get to pick up the pace when I'm feeling good. Is it my recovery day shoe? No. Not for me, it's not. I'll need a little bit more protection and a little bit more assistance on those days where I'm not feeling that great, or I'm coming off, a hard run or a workout. But for some runners, this is going to be an everyday running shoe. So in that sense, I really see the versatility. And then, like initially when we got this shoe on some runners' feet, they literally felt like they could pick up the pace in it. So some runners are going to be able to use this for even their slightly faster runs. And we saw that with the Aurora as well. You were just running faster than you thought you were going to be running. So I really see this as being a shoe that you can use for a number of different activities, and anyone and everyone could benefit from using the shoe. Like I said, it's not built for only one type of runner, but certainly I would say for those consumers that are out there and listening, and they felt like either, and this is how it's usually kind of manifests, is like, I like the shoe. I'm talking about a shoe in general. I like the shoe, but there's something about the shoe that it either feels like too much shoe for me, or I'm almost getting like too much support, or the shoe is kind of restricting how I feel like I could move. Go out and get a Glycerin Flex. And I think you will be really pleasantly surprised how you're getting the protection that you want, you need, but you're also getting a little bit more of that liberating, uninhibited, experience. And that's exactly what the shoe does for you.
I got to tell you, I can't wait to buy my dad a pair of these, because he's a casual runner. I think he ran competitively growing up, maybe in middle school, but wasn't his primary sport. He was a soccer player. And as time went on, he kind of picked up running as a form of exercise, ran 3 times a week, and loved the Brooks Ghost. Would talk my ear off about him all growing up. He would buy 2 pairs a year every 6 months because he didn't run a ton of miles. And then he tried out some other brands in kind of the maximalist shoe era, and he liked them. But his problem, funny enough, so it's like you solved his problem without even knowing it, was he didn't like how much the shoe was doing for him. He wanted to feel like he was putting in a little bit of the work, as it's funny you described perfectly in this conversation. And Brooks is his favorite running shoe brand. So it's funny those two worlds colliding, because I think this shoe is truly for the people who want that support, and want to feel like they have a shoe that protects them for the miles, but also it does make you feel like you can actually feel the ground, feel the earth underneath you. And also, in my experience, it's pretty light. And so, as you said, if you want to pick up the pace or strides after a run, if you're a competitive athlete, you have those a few times a week. I feel like it's perfect for that. And then the upper is remarkable. I feel like I haven't worn a shoe that is as comfortable as this one. So appreciate the time today. Thank you for breaking down the technology. I know we're up on time, so I will let you go. But final question, completely separate. This is just tradition. I ask every guest on the podcast this. So in lieu of tradition, the question is, if you had Gordon Ramsay coming over to your house for dinner, what would you choose to make for him?
Oh, great question. So my wife and I love cooking a really nice, mean paneer butter masala with some brown rice. So that is what I would cook for Gordon Ramsay.
I love it. A lot of people don't know this. He's run 10 plus marathons. So hopefully you send him on the way home with a pair of Glycerin Flexes, and he'll run his next marathon, and we'll make it happen. Anyways, on a serious note, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for breaking down the shoe, and my sincere congratulations on this project and seeing it come to life. And I personally love the shoe and can't wait to see others put the shoe on. January 31st, I think, is when it comes out.
Yeah, Jan 31st, February 1st. Yeah, thanks, Tom. Thanks for having me. And, again, there's a huge team at Brooks. Certainly proud of all the work. There's so many people involved in bringing a shoe to life, especially one like this, over so many years. And so really they're at the forefront of all of that.